I find a lot of people self-sabotage themselves, not necessarily because they're doing anything wrong, but because they have unrealistic expectations. And those
Yeah.
expectations make them feel like a failure, even though they're succeeding.
Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast with Lee Hayward and Jeff Samataro. Since 1997, Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding has been online helping guys to build muscle, lose fat, and become the best version of themselves. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with real-world practical fitness and nutrition advice to look your best, improve your health, and feel confident in your own skin, so you can live life to the fullest without having your body holding you back from doing the things you want to do. So if you're ready to get started, let's jump into the show.
Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. My name is Lee Hayward, and I'm joined with my co-host, Jeff Samataro. Hey, Jeff, how's things going?
Very excited to be back. Workouts have been going great. I've been getting into running as of late, which has been super cool. I've actually really enjoyed running. And music's been great. California's great. Yeah, man. Loving it all. How's everything with you?
Things have been going well for me, and especially over the fall, I've been doing a lot more cycling races. And how this came about is the Canada Games is coming to Newfoundland next summer. So the group that are doing the cycling, the road cycling team, they've been having some practice races and events, training leading up to the Canada Games. So I've been participating in those training events with them because they want to get more cyclists to come on board to make bigger events and more competition for the athletes, kind of represent what it's going to be like when a bigger group of people come for the actual Canada Games next year. For the last several weeks, I've done bicycle races every single weekend, and it's been a lot of fun. And just by doing that every week, because these are max effort, like when you're racing, you empty the tank, right? It's not just a workout; it's a max effort. But doing that week after week after week, I've really seen my fitness improve dramatically. And last week, I hit some personal best numbers for power output. Actually, hit a new VO2 max, so I'm very happy with that. And like I say, I've got another race coming up this weekend, so fingers crossed. Who knows? Might even hit another personal best on top of a previous personal best.
There you go, Lee.
But that's been a work in progress. That's something like I really got serious involved with cycling during the whole pandemic. So like 2020, when everything went to hell, if you will, that's when I really got more serious involved with cycling and started training it seriously. Not just recreationally going for bike rides, but actually structured workouts and more focused. And I've just seen my fitness go up exponentially since then. So it's been really cool. And then, of course, getting involved with racing and getting around people, being a part of the whole Canada Games group and actually working with their coaches, right? Because I mean, hey, I'm like a sponge. I never feel like I'm too good to learn. So, right, I'm in there with all these young people, but I'm in soaking it up like a sponge and learning all the tips and tactics.
Well, that's probably why you're so good at it, because you still have that mentality.
I always approach it like a beginner, right? I always approach it with the beginner's mind. Approach it like a white belt.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And how long you been doing this for now?
I mean, I started working out, back when I was 12 years old. That's when I officially started working out with my dad, started competing in bodybuilding when I was 17. And so, this has been a lifelong journey for me.
Yeah.
I'm always open to learning. And now in recent years, really focusing on the endurance side. And it's interesting to see the differences between endurance training and bodybuilding training, because there are some similarities, but there are some differences. And it's amazing when you talk to bodybuilders and then you talk to endurance athletes, they're like arch rivals of one another. Right? Like the bodybuilders like, oh, don't do cardio, you're going to lose muscle. And then the endurance guys, oh, don't do weight training, you're going to get slow and muscle bound. And medium here, guys, where you can actually reap the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I've noticed that if I neglect my cardio, that actually my strength training ends up suffering quite a bit. And then vice versa too, actually, too. Like if I neglect my strength training, like my cardio will go down a little bit too. But I was always surprised about that. But it makes sense though. Like if you have great conditioning, then you're able to power through a strength training workout with a lot more intensity and and recover and be ready for the next set a little bit quicker than if you don't. So especially if you're doing like total body types of stuff.
It's nice to see how it can be complementary. The cool thing about it is this is an avenue now that I enjoy, and of course I've been able to make some new progress. So hey, older but still getting better. I mean, how cool is that?
Right? Heck yeah, man, I love it.
But today, what I really want to dive into now is just the topic of realistic expectations when it comes to your fitness in general. Because a lot of people who come to us for help within the coaching program, they want that quick fix solution, right? They like, I want to get in shape and I want to get in shape now. And then we try and explain this is a process. There's no shortcuts, yada, yada, yada. Like intellectually, it makes sense. But then when they actually start applying things and putting the work into practice, they still resort back to those. I want the instant gratification. I want the quick fix. I find a lot of people self-sabotage themselves, not necessarily because they're doing anything wrong, but because they have unrealistic expectations. And those expectations make them feel like a failure, even though they're succeeding. It's like they're succeeding slowly, but because it's slow success, they feel like a failure because they think, I've been working out for a month. Like, where are the abs? Where are the biceps? Where's the pecs? Where's all the muscles to, right? I've been doing this for a month, or I've been doing this for a few months or for longer, but they have these unrealistic expectations. And I'm sure you probably see this in the music industry too. People expect to be professional musicians in the matter of weeks.
You know, Lee, not only do I see it in my own teachings, but I also experience it as well in my own journey with moving out here to California. Of course, there's unrealistic expectations that I set for myself to be at certain heights with an unrealistic time frame. So I totally understand where you're coming from. And I understand where the new students are coming from as well. It's a very common human characteristic, I think, to just expect that you're going to get those results quickly, and you just want to get there.
Do you want to unpack that a little more? Like, what? I guess California is the land of unrealistic expectations. You know, head west, young man. Right? You know, what's the saying? Yeah. California's full of whiskey, women, and gold, or something.
Whiskey, women, and gold. I haven't found any gold out here yet, though. Yeah, I mean, I've been out here for 3 months, and everything's going really great so far. Like, I have a couple gigs coming up. I've met some artists. I've been working on some different projects and stuff, and I've also been going out every single night and trying to meet people, and it's led to some pretty cool things, like seeing some really famous artists play around town, making some friends with people who are in the business, getting invited to different parties and stuff like that. So it's only been 3 months. But of course, I have that unrealistic expectations of like, oh, like I should be doing this and I should be doing this by now and I should be here and everything. And it's just because it's just like such a monumental hill to climb. It's a little bit daunting, and you just want to try to, if you're really passionate about something, you just want to try to do as much as you possibly can to try to ensure your success. So even though I feel like I'm doing as much as I possibly can, and I'm making a lot of progress, and everybody I've talked to, all the mentors that I work with out here too, they're all saying like, yeah, you're doing it. You're doing everything that you need to be doing. It's just going to take time. And I think that's the statement that nobody ever wants to hear, right? It's just going to take time. You know, like, well, how much time? What if I do this more? What if I go harder? What if but it just doesn't work like that. Anything meaningful takes time.
Absolutely. And, you know, the analogy I like to use there is like, think of like growing a garden. You know, you can't rush the process. There's no shortcut. Like, you can nurture it, you can tend to it, you can make sure that you water the garden, you fertilize the soil, you take care of it, you get lots of sunlight. I mean, you can do everything in your power to nurture it, but you can't force the plants to grow, right? You just have to get them to grow. And that's it. And same thing, like in your situation now, you're nurturing this process along, but you cannot force it to happen. You can't force those connections to happen any faster than they are. Like, you can nurture it. Some things like have to take time. for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard coming from a place where I was well connected and I knew a lot of people and I had put in those hours and everything, and then just to chop the tree down and replant it somewhere else. And it's just hard to start from the beginning again. But this is the process, and I've been through the process and numerous different avenues in my life. So when it comes to fitness or just learning how to play an instrument in general, and then building my career up on the East Coast. So now I understand. It's like, all right, just this is just where I am in the process. So there's comfort in that, knowing that it will happen. I've seen it happen in other facets of my life. So just got to keep showing up every day and trust the process and have faith.
Yeah, I think a big thing too is not burning yourself out in the process. Because I see this in the fitness industry a lot, especially when I'm coaching people, is they're so full of piss and vinegar to get to their goal. Like, I want to get 6-pack abs. Let's say that is the goal. And they'll do whatever it takes, right? I'm willing to do whatever it takes. There's no limits. And they'll work out like a madman. They'll starve themselves. They'll, go on this most extreme cutting diet. They're willing to take whatever supplements that they need to take, performance enhancing supplements and stuff like that. And they burn themselves out because it's not a sustainable approach. Whereas you have to think of, like, we're not trying to sprint to the finish here. This is like a marathon. Like, we're in this for the long haul, right? Just the same as you can't sprint your way to the finish of a marathon. You have to pace yourself in order to make it to the finish. Like, realize this is not a short-term thing, and pace yourself, because you can easily get burnt out trying to push too hard.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that even in just the last 3 months? Like, do you feel like you burn out a little bit?
Not since I've been out here, but when I was on the East Coast, I was certainly burning out quite a bit because I was doing so many things and I was trying to do them all to the best of my ability. And it was a ton. Like, I was working 3 jobs, and each one of those jobs was very demanding and required a lot of attention all the time. And it was like I had this vision of myself of being this, like, guy who could handle all of that all the time. And when you're just on that conveyor belt, it's just restarting all the time, week in and week out, month in, year in, year out, and everything. It's just eventually you're like, is this ever going to slow down? And when you realize, it's like, if in order for this to slow down, I need to slow down. But ever since I've been out here on the West Coast, I haven't been experiencing much burnout or anything like that. A big reason because I'm so excited to be here, and it's all so new and exciting, and I want to go out and I want to see it and I want to experience it, and I still have my priorities that are meaningful to me. So and also I'm conscious, because I did hit that burnout stage on the East Coast, that I'm not going to do the same thing out here and put too much on my plate.
I mean, hopefully it comes true. You can stick to that plan. It's easy to get sucked into that whole trap of trying to do too much too soon and get burnt out. Sometimes I have to take a step back, do a reality check, reassess things, reevaluate the goals, and start again. Big thing here, when it comes to your fitness, and again, this can apply to a lot of different goals as well, achieving your best results, getting in your best shape, it's going to take longer and it's going to be harder than you think. Coming to that realization right from the start is, I think, a healthy approach. Coming into it with a more modest and more realistic mindset than thinking, I'm going to get shredded in 30 days, or I'm going to get 6-pack abs. If that is your mindset and your expectation, you're probably going to set yourself up for disappointment. Like, a lot of people, they want to go from 0 to hero in 30 days. You were probably like that when you started your fitness journey.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. I was that way as well. Like, wanted, everybody's full of piss and vinegar from the start. And sometimes that naivety can actually serve you, because if you don't know the challenges that you're about to embark on, sometimes you're more willing to start the journey. Whereas if you knew all the challenges and roadblocks and obstacles that were in your way, it'd probably discourage you from even getting started. But, we have to find that balance in between. And I'm just looking back, like, even in my bodybuilding competition days, I remember the first time I was going to compete in a bodybuilding competition, and I seen some photos of past competitors from previous competitions, and I'm like, oh, they're not that impressive. I can do better than that. my head was in the clouds, and I didn't really have a true appreciation for how I was looking and how good those people were. I was very delusional in a way. I was only 17 years old at the time, but I competed in my first show and I got my ass kicked. And I went in there with full expectations that I was going to blow everybody away. Right? I thought I was going to be like, this teenage superstar is going to come in there and blow everybody away. And then I went in there and I scurried off stage with my tail between my legs. You know what I mean? Like, I got put in my place. But I'm grateful for that whole experience because it taught me so much. And also it connected me with other bodybuilders and other people who were doing what I wanted to do. And they kind of seen my ambition and my drive, and they kind of took me under their wing and helped to mentor me. So it was for the greater good, but it was a big wake-up call. When I did my first competition and got my ass kicked, it was actually a humbling experience, but it was a very powerful experience. Can you relate to that from the music side of things?
Like going into something and expecting big results and not getting the big results that you anticipated? Yeah. Well, certainly having it with students all the time. I work with a lot of young kids, aspiring professionals, people who are trying to get into certain programs or universities or things like that. Yeah, it always surprises me when people come in and they're like, oh, wow, there's a lot more to this than I had anticipated. So yeah, no, I've had that before. I've had people reach out to me before, and they're like, "Oh, like I've never ever played the drums before, and I've never played music before, but I want to try to be in a band. My friend's starting a band, and I want to get into this band. So can you show me enough where I can just get into the band?" Or I've had people before who are like, I play guitar, but now I'm teaching drums because there's nobody here that teaches drums, and I have no idea how to teach drums. Can you show me how to teach drums? And it's like, I've been doing this, teaching 40 students a week now for the past 13 years, and also studying the instrument on my own now for the past 25 years, going through all different kinds of mentors and experiences and playing on stage for that long. And how do you break it to somebody? How do you break it to somebody where it's like, hey, listen, like I love that you want to learn, and I appreciate it, and I think it's great that you want to learn. And I'm not saying you're not going to make progress, you absolutely are. But realistically, it's like it's something that you have to love to do, because you're going to have to consistently show up, and there's going to be moments of frustration and moments where you don't want to do it anymore, but you got to keep going because you had this initial goal and this initial drive, and you love it, and it's something that you envision yourself doing in the future. So, I mean, even to this day, I've been playing for 25 years, and I just have like severe moments of frustration where I'm just like, I'm never going to get this. I suck at this. Why can't I do this? Blah, blah, blah. And I have my own self-doubts and my own feelings of wanting to just throw it to the side. Whereas somebody who has never started before and sees me play is probably like, wow, you're so great. But in my head, I'm just like, there's so many other players that are better than I am or can do things that I can't do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Glad you brought that up. And that's the real life scenarios here. And again, I know you're referring to music, but this applies with fitness or anything that we're trying to achieve. People think, oh, you're Jeff the drummer, right? You're the music teacher, you're in the band. Like, man, like you got your shit figured out. And there's still times when like you're frustrated and feeling like you can't get this. And then comparing yourself to people who are better, because this is something we always need to realize, regardless of what level we're at, there's always going to be somebody who's better, and there's always going to be somebody who's not as good. Like we're always in the middle. As somebody might be looking up to you and saying, oh my God, like you got it all figured out. Oh, I wish I could do it as good as you. Or you're saying the same thing about somebody else, who is then saying the same thing about somebody else. Like it never ends. Like there's always somebody who's better, going to be better. There's always going to be a better musician. There's always going to be a better athlete. And even if you do get to the situation where someone is at the pinnacle of their sport, there's going to be someone else come by who's going to surpass that. In the sport of bodybuilding, okay, like some people argue Ronnie Coleman was the greatest of all time. Well, there's going to be people come by and surpass what he's achieved. Every sport has it. Oh, this was the greatest athlete of all time. And then the next generation, there's somebody else comes by and surpasses what they've achieved.
Yeah, you have to have the mentality that it never stops. You never stop learning. There's always something that you can learn that you don't know right now. Like when I moved out here, for instance, right, my big brother, I told him I was taking drum lessons because I when you come out here, there are some of the most amazing musicians on the planet live out here. So of course I want to take lessons from some of these great drummers and these great mentors. So I started taking lessons, and I told my big brother I was taking lessons, and he was like, wow, I really would have thought that like you had the whole drumming thing figured out by now. And I think he was busting my balls a little bit, but at the same time it was like, nah, man, like you never have it 100% like figured out. And you always need that person above you to keep pushing you and showing you things that you don't know before. But just like that perception of thinking like, it's like, okay, well, I just have to work really, really super hard, and then I'm going to get there. And then once I'm there, I don't have to work hard anymore. It's like not how it goes, man. It's like you have to love working hard, and you have to love the grind of getting there, because that's going to continue on for the rest of your life.
I got to ask you this. How long do you practice drumming per day on average?
Nowadays, probably like 2 or 3 hours a day.
Okay. 2 or 3 hours a day, and you've been doing this for 25 years. Just to put some background there, like you started playing the drums at 11, right? That's when you started. You're 36 now. So you've been doing this for 25 years. Like when you were 11 years old, how long were you playing drums when you first started? Like practicing?
Oh, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And it was like when my mom would yell at me to go downstairs and practice because she's paying for drum lessons.
And here you just said 25 years in, you're practicing 2 to 3 hours a day. So you're actually doing more now than you did to build up to this level.
Sure. And it's like wavering intensity too throughout the years. Like there were years where I would practice 20 minutes a day, half hour a day, whatever. But like now that I'm out here, it's like not only do I have my own things that I want to develop and work on, but I'm also working for other artists that have projects that are coming up where I have to learn X amount of tunes in X amount of days. So I have that motivation on top of it as well. But yeah, it's gone up and down over the years. Like before I came out here on the West Coast, when I was on the East Coast, like there were days would go by where I didn't practice at all. I would just go to the studio and teach lessons, and then go play on the weekends and stuff. But like I didn't have time because I was working 3 jobs at the time. I didn't have time to practice like that. So coming out here now and everything, and being surrounded by in this environment of incredible musicians and drummers has reignited that flame where I'm like, okay, I'm out here and I'm in the jungle. Like I have to start, if I want to be on the same level as some of these guys, like I have to start putting in the extra hours of work.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, it goes back to the whole idea of the 10,000 hour rule, right? We've heard of that before. That was actually done on violinists, you know, the whole idea of 10,000 hours of practice. I think the original story behind the 10,000 hour rule is that's how long it takes to master something. But even then, that's very subjective. You could argue it probably takes a lot more than 10,000 hours to truly master something. But I think we can all agree that the people who are the best at whatever they do put in the most work. Like that's a universal principle right across the board right there.
Yeah.
Put in the hours. They're the ones who are getting the best results. And again, that applies with fitness, right? And that's why I like sharing these analogies and examples from outside of fitness, because a lot of times people get so stuck into a particular bubble that we need to realize in other areas. And I'm willing to bet, like, if for people listening to this right now, think of something that you're really good at. Like maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's your career or a business you built or something. Whatever it is that you're good at. You just didn't get good at it within the matter of a month or 3 months or even within the first year. It's probably been a lifetime of progress to get to that level, whatever that happens to be. Again, if someone's a really good musician, they just didn't become a master musician in 3 months. Sure, right. Progress in 3 months. And I want to differentiate progress between like mastery or high level. Like the same with fitness and working out. Like you can achieve progress where, hey, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting leaner, my clothes are fitting better, I have more energy, like I'm seeing progress. I mean, yeah, that can happen week by week. We can see the progress. But then when you compare yourself to your favorite celebrity or your favorite athlete or bodybuilder or fitness influencer or whoever you're comparing yourself to, oh, I suck.
Yeah. I think a big reason for that is I think some people don't view weightlifting and fitness and exercise as a skill. They view it as like oh, I just go into the gym and I just lift up and I just pick up the weights and then I put them down and I do that X amount of days and then I will look great, kind of deal. They don't factor in that, like, when you see somebody who's at an elite level of being in shape and exercise and fitness, like they have everything dialed in, like they have developed these skills over time, like not just like how to lift weights and everything like that, but like how to measure their diet. You can, like, go watch like a pro level bodybuilder. They have such incredible finesse, I should say, into what it is that they do. And if you work with clients, like, right, or let's say you work with somebody or you work out with somebody who's never worked out a day in your life, like form, exercise technique, and stuff like that, like those are all skills that need to be worked on with a muscle mind connection, learning how to feel and contract the muscles, looking at your physique and deciding what it is that you want to improve, what needs improvement. Like it's a science and it's a skill that's developed over the course of months and years.
I like how you made that distinction, because I think a lot of people think it's just, I plug in X amount of workouts or X amount of days, or I cut my calories by X amount, and okay, where are the results? But it is
Right.
really a skill set you're developing here. It's not just, a checklist. I do X number of workouts and I diet for X number of days, and here's the results. Like it's not exactly as simple as that.
Right, right. When you see somebody hitting like a serious lift, like they know how to stiffen up their core, their
Mhm.
spine. They know how to load the opposing muscles. Like you watch somebody who does a bench press, like they know how to stack their upper back and how to get the arch and how to get the leg drive. They know how to lower the weight. They know how to explode up with it. And they've built that connection, that mind muscle connection. They know their body just knows the movement pattern so well from just years and years of practice doing it. It's not like if you've never lifted before, you could just sit down on a bench and just immediately do exactly what it is that that they're doing. It's going to take practice and years of building up to that kind of point. So yeah, so just like learning, like you were saying, the parallels, right? Just like learning how to play an instrument, it's the same thing with weightlifting. It's a skill. Just view it like that.
I love how you brought that up. And a common thing that I hear a lot from people who come on board with our coaching program too is people say, well, I don't want to be a pro bodybuilder. I just want to get in shape. They'll say they want to look like their favorite athletes or their favorite movie star or someone like that. Like I hear this a lot, almost downplaying it, saying, well, I don't want to be as big as Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler or, some of the, I just want to be like Jason Statham, or I want to be like the Wolverine or Jake Gillingham or whoever, right? I just want to be like these guys. And like, even they have 20 plus years of training experience under their belt. Like,
easily.
I mean, I actually was in preparation for this. I just started to do a bit of research, like Jason Statham. I mean, I love him as an actor and stuff. And I mean, he's in incredible shape. I mean, super athletic. He was a competitive diver for 10 years. And then he was involved with martial arts for multiple years after that, several different martial arts. Then, of course, he got involved with acting. But like, he comes from a lifetime of an athletic background. It's not like he just, within the last 3 months or within the last year, decided, oh, I'm going to get in shape and do the movies. Like, no, this is a lifetime. Same with all these guys. Like, you look at their background. I mean, sure, it's deceptive, because you'll see Hollywood will say, well, this is his diet and training program that he used to get ready for the Wolverine or for this role or for that role. Like, that's what they did to peak for that role, but they peaked on top of 10 or 20 plus years of foundation. It's just like a bodybuilder peaking for a contest, right? Like when you see, whoever your favorite bodybuilder or fitness model is, and they're peaking for a show, okay, they might have a 3-month or a 6-month peak phase that they go through to just kind of like sharpen up and fine tune things for competition. just like an actor fine tunes for a movie role. But that's on top of years of a foundation. If you don't have the foundation and you just slather icing, but you don't have a cake, right? You're trying to put the icing, but there's no cake underneath, right?
Total.
You have to have that foundation. And this takes time. It takes time to build that foundation. I think a lot of people get deceived with that because, Men's Health magazine and all the, the fitness media probably put out so-and-so's 12-week diet to get ready for such and such a movie role or something like that, right? Like it might actually be what they did for the final 12 weeks to peak. But again, they're peaking on top of a foundation.
Right. These guys have severe muscle maturity going on. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, like you could tell it's been decades of training. Like to have separation in your pecs like that, like Hugh Jackman has, or like look at Jason Statham's back. Like, I mean, that's like 10 plus years of training right there. And then if you see they're like, oh, this is the diet that Jason used to get into shape for this particular role, like it's like, yeah, maybe he had a little bit more body fat on him when he had started that diet, but he had 10 years of muscle that was built underneath that body fat. So now all he has to do, I say all he has to do, but like he has to diet down to show that 10 plus years of muscle maturity. So like you can get lean in 6 months to a year and you can have some muscle definition, but like to have the separation and the pop like that takes 10 plus years to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. And I mean, to kind of put things in perspective, like this is my own bodybuilding journey right here. I just want to share this. Like when I started off, I was 12 years old, right? That's when I started training. By the time I was 17, I did my first bodybuilding competition. Now, I mean, there was huge progress within that 5 years from 12 to 17. But I got my ass kicked, like I mentioned before. I mean, I went into that show thinking I'm going to blow everybody away and I'm going to win the show. I got my ass kicked. Over the next couple of years, I got better. Still got my ass kicked, but I got better. Then the next picture there, I was 28 years old. That was when I was kind of coming into, my own. In my late 20s, early 30s, that's when I think I peaked out as far as my personal bodybuilding journey. That's when I was kind of like at the upper limit. I couldn't really get any bigger, couldn't really get any leaner. I was kind of like, that was my genetic potential for what I was willing to do. Now, I'm fully transparent. I didn't go all out with all the different performance enhancements, but with what I was willing to do, that's basically my genetic peak. Because after that, kind of like beating my head against the wall for several years, not really making any progress. It was shortly after that when I decided, I'm going to take a break from competitive bodybuilding because I came to the realization that my dreams of becoming a pro bodybuilder and winning the Mr. Olympia, it's not in my hand of cards, right? I mean, when I was younger, I had full on dreams. Oh, I'm going to be a pro bodybuilder. I'm going to be the next Mr. Olympia. And gosh darn it, I'm going to do it naturally. It didn't to put it in perspective, like right here, I want to share these pictures. This one right here was me at 19 years old after 7 years of training. I mean, that's pretty darn good. Like most people would be very happy to have a physique, muscular, lean. But again, that was 7 years of training. And that was 7 years of focused training, total commitment. It wasn't this on and off again where I worked out for a few weeks and then took a couple weeks off and, take the summer off and take this off. And like a lot of people are on and off again. This was 7 years of training with the vision of I'm going to become a pro bodybuilder and I hope to win the Mr. Olympia someday. Like I wanted to be the next Dorian Yates. He was the reigning Mr. Olympia when I was at the time when I was training here. And I was so naive. Again, this was before the internet, right? I mean, I thought, hey, I can do this and I can do it naturally, right? So I was training with that passion, that drive, that desire, and competing as well. So it wasn't like this half-assed effort. That was max effort for 7 years to get to that. The next picture, that's stack another 10 years on top of it. And that's pretty much when I hit my peak in bodybuilding. That second picture was me at 29 years old. That's when I won our provincial championships, which was the best that I ever did. It was the only time I ever won an overall title in a bodybuilding competition. I won our provincial championships in 2007 at 29 years old. Like that was as big and basically as ripped. And now The conditioning may vary. Like if I dieted extra long or extra strict, I might come in a little harder, but I wasn't any bigger. And it was after this, I had some injuries. Like I tore both biceps. I ended up tearing a muscle in my back, and those injuries really hindered my progress. So I was kind of pushing the envelope for what I could achieve, but that was basically my peak right there. So
Yeah.
if you want to say what's your genetic potential, well, that was my genetic potential in terms of muscle size and definition right there. I mean, never got any bigger than that. But again, look at the timeline. That's 17 years of training, right? That's what it took me to do that. And a lot of people are looking at it and saying, like, I actually had someone, I mentioned this earlier before we started the recording. A guy reached out to me a while back and was asking me about my bodybuilding journey and saying, hey, you know, I'm impressed with what you've achieved and how long you've been working out for and all this. And I explained what I'm explaining to you now, like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. And he said, well, how can I do that within the next year? And I was just like, it took me 17 years of training to get to my all-time best. And you're asking, how can you do it in a year?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like if I was asking you, right? I mean, in your case, so you've been drumming for the past 25 years. Like, how can I be as good a drummer as you, Jeff, within the next year?
It's insulting in a way.
Yeah. Or I go ask a business owner who spent their whole life, you know, building their business, or an artist or anybody, like, okay, you've done this over the course of 20 or 30 years. How can I do it within the next year or two?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't. That's the reality.
Yeah. Right. I think it's just because, like I said earlier, I just don't think people view getting in shape and lifting as like a skill that's actually developed over time. They just think like, I'll just go in, I'll just pick up the weight, put it down, and then I'll look like this in 6 months. It's a harsh reality.
It is, and it's not totally their fault either, because the fitness industry pushes these unrealistic expectations, especially like the diet industry, the supplement industry. You know, like there's so much smoke and mirrors where people are showing these unrealistic transformations and unrealistic expectations. And
Yeah.
we don't see the full context behind those. And Jeff, I have to admit, I've been guilty of putting out some not so truthful claims in the past. Well, it's not that I was purposely trying to deceive people, but I just wasn't totally honest. Back a few years ago, I had a program called the Extreme Fat Loss Program, and basically it outlined how I peaked for competition. And this was my claim to fame, if you will, how I got absolutely ripped in just 90 days. Now,
no, Lee,
this,
no.
this here was a true transformation. Those pictures were taken exactly 90 days apart. And if you look at it, I mean, yes, there's a huge before and after there, but we have to take things into context. First off, the foundation, like in that before picture, that's not a before as in I never worked out before. That's a before as in, okay, this is my before after 17 or 18 years of training. The before is really got a foundation of 18 years, because that was actually a year after that previous picture that I showed earlier. And then all I did was basically lost the body fat that was covering it, so then you could see the muscle definition. And another little trick there as well, it's not the same pose. One is a lat spread and one is kind of like a hands on the hips, most muscular. And if anybody's familiar with bodybuilding and posing, when you crunch down and flex your abs, you look more muscular. So one, I'm expanding, doing a lat spread, which makes you look bigger and fuller. The other one, I'm crunching down, which makes you look harder and more muscular. So it's a totally different pose, even though it's kind of similar in positions. And another little trick is two totally different lightings. The lighting in the after picture is much more advantageous in highlighting the shadows. And I'm sure you know yourself, taking pictures, if you get the lighting just right, it can make you look dramatically different. You get the right lighting that highlights the shadows and you get a good pump, dramatically different, just the lighting alone. There's a lot of little subtleties there that the average person would just look at that and say, like, oh, holy smokes, like what a transformation. Don't get me wrong, there is significant improvement in those pictures, but as I just outlined, there's a lot of deceptions going on behind the scenes as well, right? Like a magician pulling the wool over your eyes. So there's a little bit of that going on there as well.
Sure.
The fitness industry is full of this. I mean, this one here is not as far-fetched as some of the transformations, because some are not even accurate at all. Like some of them are just total made up fake crap. But this was a legitimate transformation. But again, I'm just saying there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors behind the scenes. And then when people see this, they think that they're going to go from, hey, I never worked out before, to I'm going to look like this in 90 days. When no, that's 90 days of peaking on top of 18 plus years of training.
The thing is, though, is that like you have people when they get the realization, right, when you break it to them that it's going to take years and then it's going to be something you're going to have to work at forever, you get all these people who are like, well, that seems really, really super daunting, and now I don't really want to do it because I didn't realize it was going to take this much continuous effort over the course of X amount of years and everything. And it's like, to get to that level where you're doing it for that amount of years, like for that much time to go by, to be that consistency, you really have to love it. You really have to learn to love it, and you need to find some kind of aspect of fitness that you truly enjoy, because it does take that long. If you don't love it, then you're eventually going to find an excuse to stop doing it. So find what it is that you love, so that way you can get through that 10 years, and before you know it, it's like you blink and 10 years goes by.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and it's totally true what you're saying there. Like, it is going to take a long time. It's going to take years, but time is going to pass regardless. Like, that's one thing we have to realize. And where do you want to be in the next, year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? Like, where do you want to be? Because if the current path you're on right now is, you're not happy with the trajectory you're on, and maybe especially for guys who are a bit older, you're seeing like, my health is starting to decline. Like, I'm not as good a shape as I used to be 10 years ago. Hey, I piled on an extra 50 pounds of body fat, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, don't have very good energy and stamina, aches and pains. Where am I going to be in the next 10 years? According to my track record of the last 10, where am I going to be in the next 10? If you keep heading down the same road, it's probably going to start to snowball, but snowball in the wrong direction, meaning, you're going to start to compound negative results. Whereas if we change that trajectory, maybe we can undo some of the damage that's done and start to move in the right direction, because the time is going to pass regardless. So like right here, Jeff, I mean, this is your transformation that you went through here. So like, just take us through, like, what's the timeline here? Like in that before picture, the middle picture, and then the after picture.
I want to say the first picture was early 2018, and then the second picture was,
I think it was around 2020, because that was about a year into your program, or 6 months into it, or something like that.
It was February of 2020 is what it was, because you and I started in December of 2019. So yeah, and then that was when I was at my parents' house in Florida in February. Anyway, I know it's because I'm wicked sunburned in that picture.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then the third picture was 2022 or 2023.
I'm pretty sure it was 22. That's about 5-year journey from right there when you actually look at it all.
Yeah. 5 years.
Again, 5 years. I know a lot of people say like, "Oh my God, 5 years is such a long time," but like 5 years is going to pass regardless, and you could have stayed heading down the road you were on and probably be a lot bigger and on healthier, or you've trajectory and look where it's taken you. I mean, the time is going to go, right? Like, you got to realize time is going to pass regardless. And to break it down, I know when you started your journey, like right here is kind of like some of the month to month pictures that you were taking during your transformation when we were working together. And in those initial pictures, like, the progress was happening, but it was happening slow. And this is the most challenging time when coaching people. And I know we've had multiple conversations back and forth where you were saying like, okay, I'm doing the workouts, I'm following the eating plan, I'm doing the cardio. Like, how come I'm not seeing the results? Right? Like, it's not happening fast enough, but still there was progress happening there. And the cool thing is as you progress through your journey and you get leaner and leaner, then the progress starts to compound even faster. So when you see, like, if we compare the first picture you took versus the last one, like, you can see a dramatic difference in conditioning, but initially when you're going week to week, even month to month, like it's not happening fast enough.
Yeah. And I remember at the beginning stages of that, the difference between like the first picture and like the third picture, for instance, right? Like I remember being discouraged because even though I was making progress, I didn't really see that I was making progress because I wanted to look like the last picture then. But yeah, I mean, having you, of course, encouraging me too and telling me like, no, you're moving in the right direction. This is a positive thing. Like you just need to go longer, is super encouraging for me. But I'm sure if I didn't have that, then I could have self-sabotaged myself and been like, well, how come I'm not ripped yet? Oh, maybe I should start cutting carbs. Maybe I should start doing this. Maybe I should change out my workouts. Maybe instead of seeing it and being like, oh no, it's working. I just need to keep going.
Or you could do what a lot of people do and just quit because I'm putting in all this work. I'm not seeing the results yet. And they quit. I mean, for parents, think of your kids, right? They never grow up fast enough in their mind. They're never progressing fast enough in their mind. But from the outside perspective, they're growing like weeds. Like especially when you visit family and friends and relatives who haven't seen them for several months, and then next time they see your kids, like, oh my God, like look how big you've grown, look how how tall you've gotten, how this. They see the huge changes, but in the kids' eyes, it's not happening fast enough.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Kids, in that sense, it's never happening fast enough in our mind, but then to the outside person, it is happening.
Well, that's why it's important to take pictures, and it's important to track your weight. It's important to track your lifts to make sure, because you're going to see yourself every single day in the mirror. You're not going to see the changes. But if you can see on paper, okay, I lost X amount of pounds, I gained X amount in strength. Oh, look at the difference in the pictures here between the first month and the third month. And those things are encouraging, and they tell you that you're doing the right thing and that you just got to keep going.
And having a coach or a mentor in your corner to reinforce this is very helpful, because a lot of times we get stuck in our own mind. We can't see the forest for the trees. Like we're so caught up and tangled up in the weeds that we can't see the bigger picture.
Right.
Just to kind of share another example here, like here's another one of our coaching students I featured a lot, Mike. I mean, I love sharing Mike's example because it's another real world transformation. And this was a 4-year journey, right? He started working out in 2020, and now this year, 2024, I mean, he is in the best shape of his life. And you can see a huge transformation take place. But, it took 4 years. 4 years of effort. And this isn't 4 years of on and off efforts, because a lot of people, we have to differentiate that, because when people join the gym, how many people are there showing up day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out? Very freaking few. Most of the time I talk to people say, oh, I got a gym membership, but I haven't been there in the last 6 months. That doesn't count. Like paying for the membership doesn't count as going to the gym.
Right.
You don't get credit for paying your gym fee and having a membership card in your wallet. Right? Like I actually, one of the guys came on board recently, said, oh yeah, I've been a member of Planet Fitness for the past 3 years. I've only been there twice.
Yeah.
So in Mike's case, he's one of these guys, like he admits he's OCD. So when he puts his mind to something, like he's going to do it. So he's been consistent for the past 4 years. And there was a lot of times during his journey, like he admits, especially in that early phase, the results weren't happening fast enough. And he was getting frustrated. He said, like, I'm putting in all this work. Like I'm not getting the results. I'm not getting the results. And I said, Mike, let's look at your progress pictures. Let's go back and analyze your lifts in the gym. Let's look at your progress pictures. Let's look at your measurements and all that. And then once he actually started looking at the data and like, oh, okay, there is progress happening here. But again, in the mind's eye, you're comparing yourself to all the stuff you see on social media, and you go in and see all the fitness influencers, and you get bombarded. Like regardless of how good you are, once you start going on social media and getting into the comparison syndrome, you feel like you suck.
Right.
Like even in Mike's situation now, I mean, as good as he is now, I mean, he's in the best shape of his life. If he went in and compared himself to, professional fitness models and bodybuilders and social media influencers, he's going to get his ass kicked.
Yeah. Well, it's because when you go on social media, you're seeing the 0.0001% of human beings on this planet. That, so yeah, no. If you want to be happy, stay away from social media,
or be very selective of the social media that you choose. But I totally hear you. And I mean, like online, sometimes you think, well, everybody in the gym is benching 315, and everybody's got six-pack abs, and everybody's doing this. And like you go into your typical mom and pop gym or your typical Planet Fitness or LA Fitness or wherever your hell you go, like you don't see everybody repping out with 315 on the bench press. Not everybody's going around with six-pack abs like that. Even in the gym, that is exceptional. That is very rare to see that in a gym.
It's hard to find people who are doing 225, let alone 315.
Sure, it is. But we get caught up in the whole social media world and we think, well, everybody's doing that. Everybody's got shredded abs. And like, no, they don't. It's not the reality. So that's the whole purpose of this podcast today is I really want to just give that healthy dose of reality and to give people hope that, if you stay true to the process, you trust the process and refuse to quit, your results are inevitable. Now, how far those results are going to take you, I don't know. That's going to depend on your genetic potential and a whole slew of other variables. But progress is always possible, regardless of where you're at, regardless of your starting situation, regardless of your age. Progress is always possible as long as you trust the process, follow a proven system, and refuse to quit.
Heck yeah, man.
Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. And if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the podcast. And if you know someone who could benefit from this, please feel free to share it with them. And if you would like some help with your own personal fitness and fat loss goals, whether that's losing the gut, building muscle, increasing your strength and athletic performance, if you would like some help with that, then I invite you to join me for a free strategy session coaching call. I have my information down in the show notes below where you can book in for a one-on-one strategy session with me, and we can discuss you and your situation, your goals, and what it is you're trying to achieve. And if I feel that you're a good fit, then I may invite you to come on board and join our Muscle After 40 coaching program, just like the guys you've seen in this podcast today. And if it's not a good fit, then I won't give you hyper BS, but I will point you in the right direction to get the help you need. I mean, I've got a large network of people in the fitness industry. So if I don't feel that I'm the right person to help you with your personal goals and your situation, then I'll probably be able to recommend you to someone who can. So either way, at the end of your free strategy session coaching call, you'll walk away with better insights on what you need to do next to reach your personal fitness goals. So that clues it up for today's episode, and we'll be back again next week with another episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast.